Let's reconvene the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of April 20th, 2021. I'm going to ask Peter to explain to us all what it means when we say, is this meeting properly warned?
Sure. Thank you. First, I'll confirm for those who are just joining us now that, in fact, at 5:30, when you originally convened this meeting, we did confirm that this meeting has been properly warned. And we do that at the beginning of every meeting, and it is a little cryptic for folks who don't deal with this regularly and know what that means under the law. So Vermont statutes require that the time and place of all meetings be made known to the public, and that it's clearly designated by the body that's going to meet, and that information is available to the public in advance of the meeting. And then there's the other things related to the open meetings law about how the meeting is conducted and the fact that minutes have to be taken so that people can know what happened at the meeting. But pertinent to the properly warned part of this, it's making sure that the public knows how to observe the public meeting and participate in it to the degree that participation is allowed, which is, fully under the public participation part, and then at your discretion under business items that you consider. So here in the town, the way we comply with this obligation to clearly designate the time and place and make that information available to the public is by stating in the rules of procedure for the select board that the meetings will be held at 6:15 p.m. on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. So that's the place where you each year officially designate the first and third Tuesdays at 6:15 as when the meetings will be held. And of course, historically, that was at the select board meeting room, and more recently here on Zoom, hopefully during this select board year, getting back into the select board meeting room. And then the additional requirement under the statute is that the meetings be posted in a manner that makes this widely known to the public. And so we comply with that by distributing it to the news media. On the Friday warnings that go out, we allow any resident or any person or who wishes to get on a list to receive town warnings to be on that email list. So the Friday prior to these Tuesday meetings, there's an email that goes out to a wide addressee list that sends a copy of the agenda and warns the meeting. That way, it goes on that list. There are all the local media outlets, the radio stations and the newspapers all receive it, including actually the Keene Sentinel beyond the town. And then BCTV and iBrattleboro also are on that list and also do always make known the time and place of our meetings. And finally, as is often true with some of the old statutes, there's an old-fashioned requirement that a physical copy of the notice that warns the meeting be posted conspicuously in certain locations. And so we meet that requirement by posting at the library, at the Gibson-Aiken Center, and at on the bulletin boards within the municipal center. During COVID, when the municipal center has been closed, we've been putting those at both entrances, at the east and west entrances to the first floor of the municipal center. And of course, posting on the town's website. When we have done all of those things, and you ask me at the beginning of a meeting if a meeting has been properly warned, I say yes.
Thank you, Peter. I know that was detailed, but it's certainly a point of information for us all. So now I ask to approve the minutes from the April 6th meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review? And would anyone like to make a motion to that effect?
I would love to make a motion. I move to approve the minutes of meeting from April 6th.
Okay, Daniel has made a motion to approve the minutes from April 6th. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. There are no nays. So that item has passed. And then next is chair's remarks. And I have some. I would just like to note the passing of two men who've had an outsized influence on our community. The first, these were both in Saturday's Reformer. The first is Thomas Yan, and there's a great quote in the obituary in the paper from Josh Davis, who said, "Tom Yan was at the center of every good story in this community." And the obituary goes on to say that Tom and his wife, Ann Fielder, their work to make Brattleboro and more widely Vermont a place to live, a place to visit, a place that is welcoming to all, is palpable in the streetscapes, the human service budgets, and the respect paid to them through every strata of the town and state. And so I would just like to note Tom Yan's passing and give our condolences to his wife, Ann Fielder. And there was a much more cryptic obituary from William Blakely Tyler. And Bill Tyler lived in Newton, Massachusetts. And if you were to have read his obituary, you might not catch the profound influence that this man has had on the town of Brattleboro and the community. But he was a trustee of the Thomas Thompson Trust, which gives an amazing amount of money to the town of Brattleboro and Windham County, and also to Rhinebeck, New York. And in looking that over, it was fascinating to hear that this Thomas Thompson Trust determined to give money to Brattleboro because every time they went to Brattleboro, the people were so nice to them. And the trust was set up many years ago for the seamstresses, the needle workers, and the shop girls of Brattleboro, and was expanded to do good works more broadly in our community. And I just want to note the passing of Bill Tyler, who worked for many, many years to his responsibility to give for charitable giving from that fund to the town of Brattleboro and the surrounding communities. And that's all I have to say. Are there managers' comments?
Very briefly tonight, thank you. I just want to remind the public of the second opportunity to place leaves out. So looks like good weather this coming weekend, a good time to do the yard cleanup if you haven't had a chance to do yours yet. The brown bags are available at local stores, and Triple T will be picking them up on Friday, April 30th throughout the town. Thank you.
And are there members of the select board who have comments or committee reports? Daniel.
Thanks. We had a traffic safety committee meeting last Thursday morning. Traffic safety committee meetings typically happen on the third Thursday of most months at 8 a.m. As is normal, we reviewed speed data from many parts of town. And I just kind of wanted to speak to the process where if a resident felt like they wanted the town to take a look at something that was feeling unsafe, there's a form on the town's website. The town's website is brattleboro.org. And if you scroll down to the right, there's a section that says Citizen Request Forms. And if you click the Brattleboro Safety Action Form and fill it out, it magically finds its way to the right person. And if it is a traffic safety related thing, it will find its way to the Traffic Safety Committee. You know, a lot of people experience vehicles traveling at a speed that feels unsafe to them. And it is a perennial bugbear. the more you know, the more data we have, the more people are involved. I think, the more we stand a chance of improving those conditions. So I'd encourage people to reach out using that method. And if they wish to, there is public participation at that committee meeting, third Thursday of each month at 8 a.m. here on the internet.
Thank you, Daniel. Jessica, did you have your hand up before?
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the national news that just happened about an hour and a half ago before we started our meeting. The results, the jury came back on the George Floyd murder case and found Derek Chauvin guilty of murder in the 3 ways that he was charged. And I just want to take a moment to say I hope that our social justice activist community in Brattleboro that is so active is taking heart, that our BIPOC community is taking heart, that this one story is moving towards justice, towards closure. I think there's still a lot of work to do nationally and to acknowledge harm, to acknowledge inequity, to improve policing policy practice and our expectations of what safety is. And I'm really proud of the work that you guys all have done and the community has done around community safety in the past year. And I'm really looking forward to the progress that we're going to make this year and coming back to the community safety review this summer and hearing what has been accomplished.
Thank you, Jessica. Ian.
Thank you very much, Jess, for mentioning that. I was going to if you didn't, and I really echo that, and I also look forward to that work. I actually, as the resident baby of the Brattleboro Selectboard, wanted to note that as of yesterday, everybody can get their vaccine. So yes, I finally was able to sign up for mine. So if you haven't done so yet, sign up, get an account online. It's really easy. And it's also easy to look for appointments. You just continue to refresh, and I just, that's something to really help our community to move forward and to get to a post-COVID world someday. So.
I would agree. And I also want to mention that there's a lot of COVID out, more than there has been last year at this time, and that we all need to be both vaccinated and vigilant. Tim.
And special feelings towards Ian Goodnow, who had to wait for 16 and 17-year-olds as well. Had to send him a text and sort of poke him in the side about that a little bit. I wasn't going to say anything, but I, of course, want to join in sort of the national sigh of relief that we're all feeling, I think. But also, I just got an alert a little while ago. I'm not sure if other people have seen it, but Green Mountain Power is warning people that there's possibly going to be up to 1,200 customer outages between now and 9 p.m. So if your power goes out or one of us disappears oddly, that might be what's going on. It's customers in Dummerston, Newfane, Marlborough, Brookline, and Brattleboro will be affected, but it's a roll of the dice who. So just to keep things interesting.
Wow.
Thanks.
All right. That's what public participation is next. And I see Gary's hand.
Oh, hang on. Good evening, everyone. Seemed like, God, like almost weeks since we last seen each other. Guys are looking younger than me. My goodness, I don't know how you do it, but I just want to say greetings, and I'm pretty adamant myself and happy about the verdict, and looking to see that we get more positive things going now in the community to move ahead as well. I just want to give out an announcement that our first RTM steering committee went off with a hitch. Went well. It was great. Looking forward to the next meeting that we have and getting along with also the select board and other issues and stuff for the town to move ahead and get things going and functional again once we get things happening and this COVID is gone completely. That'll be great. But I'm really happy and proud of everything that's going on. I'm looking forward and seeing great things coming ahead in the years to come. Thank you guys so much, and stay well, stay safe, and get your vaccination.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Now, let's see, we have no items on our consent agenda. So our next item is liquor commissioners, and would anyone like to move to become liquor commissioners?
I'll move that we convene as liquor commissioners.
Thank you, Jess. Jess has asked that we move to become liquor commissioners. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Were there any no's? I'm assuming that was unanimous, but I wasn't really looking. So may I ask Peter to start us off on the first class liquor license?
Certainly. I'll summarize it, and then I see that Avery Schrank from Hermit Thrush Brewery is in the meeting. So I'm sure you'd like to hear directly from him about this. But the essence of this one is a little different from when you hear other requests for licenses throughout the year. This is not the changeover of a business from one owner to another. This is not the creation of a new business in town. This is actually a changed circumstance because of the state changing its regulations. So a business that is well established and thriving here in Brattleboro needs to come and ask for a first-class liquor license, because in order to continue to provide the services that they do to their customers, Hermit Thrush now needs to have a first-class liquor license where it did not previously need to have that. So they've filled out all the proper paperwork. We've done all the thorough review that town staff does. It's been approved by the public safety departments and everyone else. And so we're happy to recommend that you approve this first-class liquor license this evening. And as is your usual custom, it would be probably good to hear from Avery about the business.
Great. Avery, are you here with us? Oh,
Hi,
yes.
Avery. I am. We've also got my business partner, Chris, signed in, and actually, I think he was very interested in giving a little presentation. So,
Great.
if you could actually,
Awesome.
Chris.
There you go.
Live from
Good to see
Hello.
you again. It's been a while.
Sorry, I didn't. Thanks for having me, and thanks for considering this. Yeah, we're excited to continue our service and excited to be reopened at the parklet recently. And yeah, thanks for the intro, Peter. You said it very well. The licensing requirements have changed, and we're still going to be a closed at 9 p.m. kind of shop, and on the quiet side, focusing on tastes. So.
Great. So why don't you just elaborate a little bit more on your hours of operation and the fact that you'll be in the parklet and all the social distancing measures will be met, and then people should come on down.
Yeah, so currently we're just open Thursday through Sunday. COVID restrictions, we sort of need to keep staffing a little bit tighter. But we're soon hoping to expand into a 7-day-a-week retail operation. But for now, we're 11 to 7, basically 4 days a week or so. Fridays and Saturdays, once the summer rolls around, late May, we expect to be open till 9 or so. And those are the only days that would be later than 7 or 8. Monday through Wednesday, we are really just going to be focused on retail. And so I would be surprised, 7 o'clock would be as late as we'd be open those days, I would expect. And so we hope for a little bit of flexibility in our hours, just because there's a lot of stuff to figure out these days. But yeah, in general, we will be between 4 and 7 days a week. And Fridays and Saturdays are the only days that would be closing as late as 9.
Great. Thank you very much. Avery, is there anything that you would like to add?
Nope. I think just excited for the opportunity and taking advantage of the state changing their licensing requirements. It's going to give us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the size of pours and the opportunity to provide customers taste of our beverage. But really, I don't think we plan on seeing much change in what we've been doing. So just, I think, treating it internally like a reopening, and excited to get things going again in town. It's been
That's
a
great.
long year.
Yes. All right. Would someone like to make a motion? A board member?
Yes, I can make a motion.
Thank you, Ian.
I move to approve a first-class liquor license for Hermit Thrush Brewery located at 29 High Street.
Great. Okay. Ian has made a motion to approve a first-class liquor license for Hermit Thrush Brewery located at 29 High Street. I'll ask for a vote, both your hand and voice, please, select board members. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any noes? No. Okay. That motion has passed 5-0. Congratulations, and we'll see you at the
Thank
parkland.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll look forward to it.
Great.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion to have us not be liquor commissioners?
I'll make a motion to adjourn
Thank
as liquor commissioner.
That's it. Adjourn. Okay. All in favor of adjourning as liquor commissioners, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. The next item is unfinished business, our annual select board goals. So let me ask the select board, have you all had a chance to review the revised select board goals that were in our backup materials? And would anyone like to begin that discussion? Hello. Is there anyone who would like to make any changes to the revised select board goals that were presented to us? Would anyone like to make? Yeah, I
Well,
heard something.
Sorry, I actually was looking for it in my, and I'm looking in the wrong doc. That's why I can't find it. So
I'm scrolling myself. There's an awful lot of paperwork for
no,
the
I
last year.
opened the wrong document, and now I'm looking for. So someone else will have to say something.
Here we are.
You guys could just pass the paper back and forth,
You would think so, wouldn't you?
except maybe not.
Oh.
There's the DLC paperwork to get through first.
So as
Okay.
Peter pointed out, the revised items are underlined for ease of recognition, and that's nice. I think it reflects the discussion that we had last time, but if there's anyone who would like to make further comments or discussion, please speak up.
I just want to send huge appreciation to Peter. This is, like you said, a great reflection of what we discussed. Big fan of adding another F to the fossil-free fuel facilities fund. Thank you for the alliteration. The one thing that still bothers me is not, because we're going to be holding ourselves accountable to these, is not having a definition or a measure or some sort of qualification for how we are applying this equity lens. But I'm really happy with this document.
Great. All right. Then anyone else like to comment any further or make a motion?
I'll comment on a couple things.
Mhm.
I am certainly not opposed to it. I find in COVID recovery, number 3, emphasize restoring the vitality of outdoor public spaces, a little vague, but certainly it's something we could check in on and maybe even add a little detail to that in July when we look at this again. I mean, it just seems excessively vague to me. I'm not sure what that means even.
Well, let's ask Peter then. What did you have in mind by
Peter add that? No, did he?
No?
I I wrote it, but I wrote it to reflect a comment that one of you made, and I'm sorry, I don't remember which one. There was a
Yeah.
brief discussion following the comment that was made under public participation about this, I think it was public participation, maybe it was under goals, but in any event, regarding the potential creation of a space downtown for public gatherings. And so then I responded to that by talking about how Gallery Walk is being relaunched with multiple different spaces downtown being used in a, the plans taking shape to do that in a way that is sensitive to continued COVID precautions, but yet, very much intending to draw people back into the downtown area. And at the same time, we have a variety of different ways in which on town properties that's happening too. Up at the Common, some activities being planned, and out at Memorial Park, some activities being planned. So one of you actually said something kind of close to this. I don't remember exactly who it was or exactly what your words were, but the reason I wrote it broadly as a representation of the what I understood to be your collective interest in this topic was because it's not really just about downtown, and it's not really just about town facilities, and it's not really just about something that's privately sponsored. It may be town sponsored, but it's more about, let's get people outdoors to be able to gather, because outdoors is going to continue to be a safer place than indoors. That was my understanding of your intention, and that's why I wrote it that way.
Well, let's hear it for intentional vagueness.
Maybe it's breadth.
No,
What about broadness?
Broad, okay.
Broadness. Yeah.
Vagueness. Yeah.
That's fine. I just wanted to toss that out there. The only other comment I had was the down in the cannabis area. I do want to remind everybody that, especially with the number 3, participate in the development of state regulations that will impact municipal cannabis regulations. Not a great history of Montpelier being super tuned in to the needs of municipalities, to be honest. So, to the extent that we can, certainly we can make our feelings known, but I just wanted to not have an unrealistic expectation as to we're going to be looked to be setting this policy. I don't think that's really the plan.
No,
Sorry.
but we're all free to discuss with our legislators.
Certainly, and the state will be setting up a statewide cannabis control board that will be looking for members to participate. And we can either potentially have a select board member or encourage members of the community to get out and apply for those positions.
I think that board's already been set up.
Ian?
Ian.
I think for in the hope to make this point this section as complete as possible, I think it's important to at least acknowledge the Montpelier and the legislature's role in this, and that in the soft power ways that we have to hopefully be a part of that conversation. I think it makes sense to have it in here. I hear your point though, Tim. I do. I think, we probably could just continue to pile on and take off and pile on of this list. I think it looks good. I think we have a lot of work to do.
If I could characterize it, I don't think that Tim was advocating to remove this item, just to say, and also I don't think he was suggesting that we give up on Montpelier. We were just saying that got to keep at it. Am I correct in interpreting your remarks?
I'll take that as a friendly amendment. Sure.
Okay, great.
And I wasn't trying to imply that he wanted to remove it.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify. All right. If the select board has no more commentary on that, I'll open to the public. Mr. Stroud.
Yeah, hi. Just to answer Jessica's question, it says here, Montpelier, Governor Phil Scott announced today that he has appointed James Pepper of Montpelier, Julie Hubbard of Colchester, and Kyle Harris of Montpelier to the Cannabis Control Board, CCB. So that was implemented. I just looked that up. So I don't know if that's something that is going to probably be a separate entity outside of the new control board, because they did it in December. They had people had applications out there, and I think they already elected the people in January. So is that something that you think, I don't know, maybe what Tim was saying, we can probably have a separate committee or a separate entity outside of that to just oversee, to make sure things are running the way they should?
Well, Peter, the law allows for the municipality to have their own control board, right? Would you like to
Actually
explain that?
requires, in order for us to actually be a town where retail sales are allowed, as has been approved by the voters, we will have to set up a town of Brattleboro cannabis control board. And so that's on here, as well as actually the first item of business for, in our goals. So we will certainly be having a local focus to this. And I think the purpose of item number 3 there was, as several of you have spoken to, everybody has their own opinion about how much effort is worth putting into that particular part of it, and trying to, encourage the state to behave a certain way in the promulgation of the state's regulations. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, it is a recognition that that's going to be the context within which we exercise our local. I think it's appropriate that it be there in the goals.
Yeah, because they have certain rules and regulations of participating on there. I don't know if you, I guess, to share that with you, their rules, how they're set up. For Act 164 from 2020, CBC was created, and they have this particular rules of who can be on that advisory committee or panel. Would that also be implemented for the town as well? Would that, we have to follow those guidelines?
The town will have to operate within statute, but the specific things that you're pointing to there in that legislation speak to the state, the establishment of the state cannabis control board. The town's board, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. We're only, you are setting goals tonight. You're not dealing substantively with these issues. But I believe when it comes time to deal substantively with this issue, you will give serious consideration to running parallel to the structure for liquor control regulation, where this select board might actually be the cannabis control board for the town.
Oh, okay.
Later.
Yeah, because they have certain people that can be on there. If you have your own business, you can't be on it. If you sell the product, you can't be on it. So it's only certain individuals that are allowed on that particular committee.
But again, that's for the state.
Right,
There's two
right,
different,
exactly.
talking about two different things.
Okay, so that'd be a whole separate entity. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
All right. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Now, are we voting on these?
Yes, please. It'd be appropriate either to make any final changes to it or to vote to approve it in the modified form that it's before you tonight.
Well, I need a motion before we can vote.
Oh, I actually, one last question. I apologize.
Sure, Ian. Sure.
Do boards in past years, have they modified these in their quarterly reviews?
Yes.
I've seen that happen rarely. I wasn't going to speak to it when it came up briefly earlier. I would say these are goals, right? These are not explicitly formed tasks, that if you decide to do something a little bit differently from how you imagined it in April, that you would need to change it later. And I would suggest even that might not be so useful in terms of kind of reflecting how an issue evolved over several months and you decided to take a slightly different action. The purpose of the quarterly reviews is to see how we're doing in addressing these and make sure that we don't lose track of something. It's not so much for you to amend your list, but if you choose to, of course, that's within your discretion to do.
Thank you very much.
That's why they're written broadly, not necessarily in a vague manner. Okay, motion?
There.
I'll make a motion.
Tim?
Thanks. I'll make a motion to approve the select board's goals for 2021 to 2022 as revised.
All right, Tim has made a motion to approve the select board goals for 2021, 2022 as revised. All in favor, please signify by voting yay and raising your hand. Okay, unanimously passed. Did I do that wrong?
No, you said yay, and we were all like,
Wait.
I want to say aye.
Oh, aye.
It's fine. It's great. I love it.
Okay, great. All right. Next, moving right along, monthly financial report. Mr. Elwell?
Thank you. So this evening's report is not much different than it's been over the past several months, but I wanted to just shine a little bit brighter light on the parking fund situation. So let me first say that the rest of the report is, doesn't have any cause for concern. It's a month where we're 75% of the way through the fiscal year, and we're running at 71% of expenses in most areas. And that's just right where we ought to be at this time of year. So there's just nothing remarkable in the utility fund or the general fund. But as has been true throughout COVID, the parking fund is running way behind. And we know that we will have a significant operating deficit in the parking fund this year. We've known that since early in the fiscal year. We started talking about this last October. And so I wanted to remind everyone of that, and also point out that with the $3.3 million of ARPA funds, the American Recovery Plan Act, that will be becoming available to the town. The first priority usage of that in the legislation, the intention of it, and the recommendation of it, although it's not binding because it's a very flexible bill that allows us to use the funds as you deem appropriate, with very few strings attached. But nevertheless, in the passage of the legislation, its primary purpose was to first and foremost offset operations of government that have suffered very significantly financially. In other jurisdictions, that actually includes the general fund. Depending on the structure of finances in different municipalities, some folks have actually run deficits in their general fund, which is then a really precarious, particularly precarious place to be, because you don't have the ability to offset that from other funds. With the parking fund, if there was no ARPA, we could make the parking fund whole using a transfer from the general fund. But that, of course, would draw down the sort of healthy financial position of the general fund and place a burden on the taxpayers going forward. So it is great that we have the ARPA funds as a way to prop back up the parking fund, and staff will recommend to the board when we come forward over the next couple of meetings and have some advice to offer about how we might move forward with a methodical process for you to consider how these funds should be spent, and to get public input about how these funds should be spent, and move on towards decisions about that. We will recommend that the top priority be making the parking fund whole, because it is otherwise going to be in deficit and be a burden to the general fund. So before we look to the variety of really good uses that those funds might be put towards for the betterment of the community, we want to make sure that we prop up an operation that's already integral to town government and to the services we provide to the community that is going to fall deeply into deficit this year. So what does the math tell us about that? The math tells us that there will still be almost $3 million available to be used in those flexible ways, and based on the decisions you will make about what to invest in. But we'll strongly urge you to have it be almost $3 million instead of 3.3, so that first piece of it can put the parking fund back in solid financial operation. And that's all I wanted to do tonight with this report, was just kind of shine a light on that, let people know that's coming soon. And then, of course, as usual, to answer any questions that you might have about the report.
Daniel.
Thanks. The parking fund is currently $180,000 in the hole. Is that correct?
That sounds about right. We expect to be about 300,000 at the end of the year.
Really? Okay. I guess my take on it was that that 180 will get smaller as we get closer to the end of the year? You think it's going to get larger?
Yeah, I think it's going to get larger because of the rent situation. We will start to see parking fees and fines pick up, but it's only going to be, that'll ramp back up slowly from bare bottom, and rock bottom, I should say. And thank you, Jessica. I realized that too.
Poker face.
From rock bottom. But the rental income, of course, has gone to zero for one of those spaces and deeply discounted for the other one. And that's going to continue on actually into next fiscal year. And so that's why we want to be careful and run some numbers on this and give you a good analysis of how much of the ARPA funding should be transferred into parking in order to really solidify that situation. And we hope actually position the town to be able to proceed with the capital improvements you had previously approved so that we can seal the deck and protect the retail spaces from getting rained on. So, there's some pieces of this that we need to look at more carefully and more thoroughly to bring you a report that says X in a carefully calculated manner is the right amount of money to put into the parking fund. Right now, we don't know that number, but we know it's going to be north of 300,000.
Okay.
Mhm.
Ian,
I didn't have my hand up, but of course I have something I can say.
Oh.
I was just gonna, I would say that I've been a little, it's not really a very flashy thing to use ARPA money on, but it is something that is deeply impacted the town because of COVID, and it makes a lot of sense that we would move forward and use some of it to make us whole in that way so that it doesn't impact us in other ways. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And I guess we will still have more money in that fund and also potentially from other sources that we'll be able to use as well, hopefully.
yeah, I agree. And I think it's great that we have this ability to be made whole. But I also think it's great that the town accounting has segmented this out so that it's clear that this is the loss that the town has faced. And of course, we're really grateful that this is the only major loss that we have. Anyone else like to discuss this matter further? Is there anyone from the public who would like to discuss this matter further? Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Let's see, financial questionnaire and checklist. Peter?
Thank you. I think the best way I can describe this, and I will give a little bit more information for the public's benefit in a moment. I know you've had a chance to look at these and read the summary, but there are certain things we have to do at the beginning of every select board year following town meeting that are just part of complying with statutory requirements. And in this case, there's a statutory requirement as well as a town auditor's requirement. But in very much the same way that at the last meeting, you approved a couple of different documents that are required for transportation purposes to show that we're actually managing our road maintenance and road standards in a way that is in compliance with best practices and the state's requirements. This is very much like that, but related to the management of town finances. So there is a checklist regarding the internal controls being the ways in which we have checks and balances and other procedures in place to make sure that proper standards are followed, and that, for instance, the person who opens the checks isn't the same person who deposits them in the bank, so that there can be tracking of money that comes into the town and then gets properly deposited. You want multiple people to be involved in most tasks. That's really challenging for some of the smaller towns to do. We're fortunate that we've got a critical mass where we're able to comply with most of the best practices that are recommended or required of municipal finance. So what these documents do is they show in explicit detail. There's like 130 different questions that are asked between the three separate documents, and the answers to those questions reflect the degree to which the town has robust internal controls and financial policies. And these are unchanged from last year because our policies are unchanged from last year. The one thing in here that it does reflect is the additional turnover in a finance director. That's an important thing to note because under certain circumstances that can raise particular concerns that need some particular attention. In our case, that was not what happened. And so it's just noted as a matter of the record that we had a finance director for a portion of this past year and are now in between finance directors again. So it notes that different people were responsible for certain tasks at different parts of the year. But all of the procedures remain exactly as they were. One of the nice things when you do bring in a new finance director, the next time that we do that and hopefully have that person here long enough to kind of get their sea legs and fully understand the operation is then you get that fresh set of eyes on talking about additional ways in which perhaps we should strengthen procedures. But I can assure you from my experience here and elsewhere that particularly for a community of our size with a limited staff, by Vermont standards, we're big. By broader national standards, not so much. We have a really well-designed set of procedures that keep tasks that should be separated from one another.
Great.
And the action that's proposed is for you to approve these basically as having reviewed them. You're not responsible for them, but you're responsible for receiving them and sending them on to document that this conversation happened tonight.
Very good. Is there further discussion from select board members? Would someone like to make a motion?
Sure.
Thank you, Jessica.
I'm going to read this one.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a motion to authorize the chair, Elizabeth, to sign the financial management questionnaire, the municipal checklist for internal control, part 1 and 2, other controls as required by the state of Vermont and the town's auditors.
Okay. Thank you, Jessica. Jessica has made a motion to authorize the chair to sign the financial management questionnaire for towns and cities, the municipal checklist for internal controls, part 1, cash controls, and municipal checklist for internal controls, part 2, other controls as required by the state of Vermont and the town's auditors. I'll ask now for a vote, a hand and voice vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you, Peter. And now for the emergency management plan, let's bring Len Howard, our new chief, to the table. Well, there he is. Congratulations, Len. And what do you have to tell us this evening?
Thank you. Tonight I'm in front of you for the annual approval of the Brattleboro Emergency Management Plan. And this plan covers 5 major areas: prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. And this plan is very detailed, and I know you folks got the link to it, and hopefully you read it all and know it from front to back.
This isn't a quiz though, right, Len?
But yeah, it's just an annual thing. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Does anyone have any questions of Chief Howard? Okay. Tim, were you threatening a comment?
No, I was just trying to fill the dead air with a little bit of sound, so I was humming a tune, something like that. No, I will say that I attended a long time ago, feels like 20 years ago, attended an all-day LEMP workshop with Mr. Peter Elwell. And I actually found it to be quite interesting. And you gain a new appreciation for everybody working in public safety and the network. It's
Yes.
really a great thing.
Well, you know, we have had a public emergency for the past year, and it's brought home to us, you know, how important emergency communication and procedures are. So I thank you very much, Chief, for revising this and bringing this for readoption. Does anyone have a motion that they would like to make?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Daniel.
I move to adopt the 2021 Brattleboro Emergency Operations Plan and to authorize the town manager to certify that the plan has been duly adopted by the board.
Thank you, Daniel. Daniel has made a motion to adopt the 2021 Brattleboro Emergency Operations Plan and to authorize the town manager to certify that the plan has been duly adopted by the board. I'll ask for a vote, both hand and voice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it has passed unanimously again. Thank you all. And thank you, Chief Howard.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay, next is the update of the Tri-Park Master Plan. And Sue Fillion will come to the screen. Hi, Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Hello. Thanks for having me. So what I wanted to do was present to you the Tri-Park Master Plan. It was actually completed last year around this time, but with everything that went on and the fact that we haven't closed out the grant yet, we just kind of held off on giving a presentation to the select board. But the time feels right. There's a lot of movement at the state level, and we're continuing to look for some funding to help implement the Tri-Park Master Plan. So it seems like a good time to bring everybody up to speed. Also in the meeting, if there's questions, is Kay Curtis. She's the Tri-Park Cooperative President. And Mary Houghton, I saw they're both on here. I'm sorry if I missed anybody else, but I'm sure if you've got questions, we can invite them in as well. This project is really important, and I'll get to that, but I guess to just kind of situate it a little bit, it really sits, you know, at an intersection of climate change, of housing, affordable housing, home ownership, a sense of community. It deals with public safety from flooding, and it also deals with environmental justice issues, I think, how people of lower incomes are living on land that was cheap to develop, but floods frequently. And then also, if you look at the situation as we get into kind of what the master plan showed, how the formation of the co-op and the infrastructure, you know, they were preserving their homes because the property owner was going to sell it out from underneath them, and how they took on substandard infrastructure and have had to make all these changes along the way. So it's just a really important project that touches on lots of different aspects of planning. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to share a PowerPoint with you because I always like to share images and help tell the story. So
We love it. I love it too. It helps our ratings, Sue, so please do.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So the partners in this project were Tri-Park Cooperative, several of their board members and their park manager, including Kay and Mary, who were here tonight. The town of Brattleboro, I participated, as well as Brian Bannon in our office. And then actually the whole Tri-Park Master Plan started the whole discussions with Tri-Park started years and years ago. So select boards, fire chiefs, town managers, everybody's been involved. The consultant for this report was DuBois and King. Chris Sargent was the planning manager, and Isaac Wagner of Brattleboro actually dealt with a lot of the financial analysis of this plan. And the funding for it was provided by the Vermont Community Development Program. The town of Brattleboro had a contribution, Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and Tri-Park funded some of the work that went into this plan, as well as additional components came up. They were able to provide that funding. But primarily it kicked off with the Vermont Community Development Program grant, with all those partners contributing. So a little bit about Tri-Park. It's a cooperative housing corporation. It has a total of 318 total units in 3 properties. You might know them. There's Mountain Home out in West Brattleboro, out by Sunset Lake Road, which is one of the largest mobile home parks or the largest mobile home park in Vermont. There's Glen Park, which is in West Brattleboro Village, and then Black Mountain Park, which is up off of Black Mountain Road in the north end of town. The purpose of Tri-Park is to operate property on a cooperative basis as a limited equity housing cooperative for the mutual benefit of the shareholders. And in their stated mission, they do say that they're going to provide affordable housing to predominantly low and moderate income homeowners. And that's a really important point, is that they are, a lot of their shareholders are elderly. There are a lot of our working population, people who perform critical jobs in our community, clerks, cashiers, custodians, medical assistants, childcare workers, home health care aides, firefighters, you name it. It does provide affordable housing for working people in our community, as well as people who are living on fixed incomes. And generally, they run a waiting list for entry into the cooperative, which just shows, we all know there's such a housing crunch, but it also just goes to show that there is a need for middle and lower income housing. So the relationship between Tri-Park and Brattleboro, I'm going to start with it in 2008, but it actually goes back earlier. I think I found documentation from the early 2000s where the state and the then fire chief were concerned about needing to do evacuations during flood event. But to get us to the point of the master plan, basically, in 2008, the town and Tri-Park signed an operating agreement to replace Mountain Home's sewer and water system. And as part of that agreement, there was the pressure from different state agencies to develop a master plan to relocate certain homes out of the floodplains in Mountain Home Park. So they're floodways and floodplains, but locations that were subject to the kind of repetitive flooding. Since signing the agreement, Tri-Park has actually been really good about, as a home is removed, they have not replaced it. So they've been living up to the expectations of the agreement. Tropical Storm Irene came and several of the units were demolished, were destroyed and demolished, and no homes have been put in their place. And so out of that operating agreement, there are 42 units that remain for removal. And then it also says there's additional units in Glen Park, and I'll get to that in a little bit. We've actually identified more units that are at risk. So the master plan does not deal with the units in Glen Park at this time. And so in 2016, 2017, Tri-Park was in a position where they were ready to take on the master plan. And so the town sought and received funding through the Vermont Community Development Program. And we actually got going in about 2019. So the purpose of this master plan is to reduce the potential flood hazard risks to homes located in the mapped floodplain. We want to make sure that while we're doing that, we're stabilizing and increasing the number of units because they have had loss, and so that's loss of income to them. And to develop a plan for implementation. So how can we make this happen? I just mentioned briefly that part of this project is we did some analysis of the floodplain because we have a lot better information out there and the FEMA maps are old. And so a hydraulic and hydrologic analysis was performed. And we actually identified that the floodplain is wider and then the flood depths are deeper throughout both Glen and Mountain Home. And so, as I mentioned before, while the agreement deals with 42 units, and that's what this master plan does deal with, there are actually more homes that are at risk in the parks.
Sue?
Yeah.
How does, oh, I guess you're going to show me, how does the flood calculations that you did correspond to the damage from Irene?
I don't have that map.
Oh.
There is a map out there, so I can send it along.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I can't recall off the top of my head how it corresponds. I think there were areas where it kind of jumped around a little bit, but I might be confusing that with Melrose Terrace. I don't know if Kay or Mary can speak
Well,
to
I
that.
can ask you at another time. I was just curious because, you know, Irene was such an anomaly, and I wondered whether the current flood calculations reflected that.
I think in Mountain Home, it was pretty, you know, what was substantially damaged may have, you know, was generally within the area in the floodplains. So I think that was pretty close. Glen Park, I'm not as sure about, but as I look at this map, I mean, I think, yeah, it's pretty right on as to where the damage was and where the floodplains are.
Thank you.
So this plan looked, basically part of the strategy was we needed to take a look at the existing conditions, what the infrastructure, what the natural environment was like, and what the financial picture is like. And so part of it was to update a property conditions assessment to figure out what the capital planning needs are and what the more critical infrastructure needs are. I mentioned the hydraulic and hydrologic analysis that was part of this project to take a look at the floodplains. There was a looking at alternative locations that could be developed and then the costs to develop of those. And then finally, there was scenarios that were used to determine the best strategy to move forward. And that was using pro forma analysis. So this is a little summary of the needs or what exists and what the needs are. So Black Mountain is the park that you're seeing on the left, all in purple. The purple shows the area of the park, the property. There's 29 residents there and it needs sewer improvements. Their sewer system is past its useful life. Glen Park is on your right. The red that you see is the floodway. The blue area is the flood hazard area. So this park is almost entirely, these units are almost entirely in the special flood hazard area. There are 23 residents. Its occupancy is 55 plus. They had significant damage in Tropical Storm Irene. And a lot of those units were not able to be replaced. And they also have significant wastewater needs. So those are the two main infrastructure issues is sewer systems for both Black Mountain and Glen Park.
Thanks, Sue. I just wanted to point out that when you say the 23 residences, we're talking about properties. We're not talking about people, right? There's more than 23 people that live there and more than 29 at Black Mountain.
Yeah,
No.
There's 23 homes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So does this plan identify 23 homes or 23 building sites that are out of the floodway? At the floodplain?
It does. However, those 23 residents in Glen Park, this plan did not deal with the Glen Park residents. that remain in the floodplain because they were not part of the original agreement between Tri Park and the town. So we're going to get over to Mountain Home, which is where the focus of the work was. We know that Glen Park is an existing need. So Mountain Home Park has 266 homes. It's got about 7%. I think, well, Tri Park in general has about 7% of the town's population. As you can see from the red down along Brookwood Drive, you probably can't read the map too well, but the floodway is along Brookwood. And then the floodplain is pretty extensive. It goes up Woodvale, Edgewood. So it kind of hits, that part of the park is where another stream comes down. So the floodplain is kind of all in that area. The issues here, so it has obviously the significant floodplain issues. There were 7 units that were damaged during Tropical Storm Irene, all of which were not replaced. Most of them were floodway. I think there were a couple of floodplain properties there. The bridge on Winding Hill needs to be replaced. The bridge on Detman Drive needs some upgrades. The water and the wastewater are relatively new because of the projects in the mid-2000s. So again, this is the primary project area. And it's where the 42 remaining units are located.
Oh, Sue?
Yeah.
Just before you go on to the next slide, can you just help me understand this map a little bit better?
Or
the red is the floodplain only, and the blue.
No, so the red is the floodway, and the floodway is an area that we actually don't allow development in Brattleboro anymore. And if a mobile home is substantially damaged, it cannot be replaced there. So when we talk substantially damaged, it's 50% of the assessed value of it. And these tend to be, they're on a nice day, they're really nice locations because they're right along the brook, but they're also really at risk. And they're some of the older mobile homes in the park. So yeah, you can't see it that great on this, but underneath the red, there are some units. The blue hatching is the flood hazard area. And that's where it kind of goes up Edgewood and Woodvale, and then lower than Brookwood, kind of across Route 9. That is an area where we allow development, but it has to be elevated above base flood elevation. And that gets to the point where the H&H study actually said that the flood depths are, they can be up to 9 feet in these areas, in some of these areas. So elevating it is not necessarily a cost-effective strategy. So, for Tri Park, that might mean the loss of more rents. But if they're not elevated, they're not safe for people to be living there.
Okay, and the red that was in the last slide, the Glen Park, that corresponds to the same. Yeah.
Yes.
So okay, great. Thank you. I think the number of colors, I was just making sure I understood it all.
Yeah, those came from the report. The purple confuses a little bit too, I think. And so this is a kind of a snapshot of the financial conditions that the plan was based on. So this was as of 2019. So there was kind of a discussion of the rent and the lot rents. So at Mountain Home, homeowners pay their water and sewer bills directly to the town. At Black Mountain and Glen, the water and the sewer is billed directly to Tri Park, and then the cost is passed on to the residents via the rent structure. So that's why you see a higher rent for 51 units. Those are basically the Glen and the Black Mountain units. And Tri Park does have a series of regular rent increases. The master plan found that from a market perspective, there is room to raise rents, but at the same time, we need to make sure that it remains affordable. And I think in their bylaws, there's only so much of an increase that can be done year over year. But Tri-Park, again, has been increasing the rent. These are a bit below. In 2019, the median state lot rent was $340. It's not clear whether or not that included water and sewer in it. The operating budget, so basically over 50% of their operating budget at that time was designated towards debt service. There are 7 loans that they were holding at that time. 2 of the loans were from the purchase of the park. 2 are the Brattleboro special assessments. There's 2 VITA loans. The special assessments and the VITA were to the water and the wastewater project. And then just a truck loan. The special assessments are at very good rates and terms. And so the plan basically identified that the 2 loans, there was one called the record loan and a TD Bank loan, that those needed to be refinanced. Those should be restructured to get better rates. And perhaps Mary or Kate could talk to that about that. I believe there was some work done on that. And then the capital needs, there's obviously bridges and sewer systems that need to be replaced. And there's constant work that Tri-Park is doing with their capital. They've been improving the electric, what's the word? They've been making improvements throughout the park as they can. But I would also say that they did exhaust a lot of their reserves with Tropical Storm Irene. So their ability to take on the capital improvements has been challenging. So this slide gets into looking at the alternate locations that once we had kind of the existing conditions, where could they look to maybe be able to develop some new sites to remove them from the floodplain? So there was a site out west on the western edge of town, a former gravel pit that was for sale during that time. And that was ruled out. It was just too costly to develop. And basically what we found is that any site that was not under the existing ownership of the cooperative was just going to be too expensive to develop. There'd be permitting constraints and potential natural resource constraints. So pretty quickly off-site development was ruled out for those kind of constraints, but also their ability to afford to purchase something. There were several locations. You can see some of this pinkish purple within Mountain Home Park. So we call these infill locations. So there are sites within the park that we kind of focused on. And these are those sites. So one actually is just adjacent to Mountain Home Park. There was not, that's site number 2. The property owner was not interested in selling. So that left one, site 1, which has the potential for some lots. Site 5 there's a couple of infill lots that could be created there. And then the site 3 is where the existing maintenance building for Tri-Park is. And there was discussion of maybe relocating that and then making possibly 16 units out of that. Site 4 was ruled out after meeting with state because it's within the river corridor and they wouldn't allow development there. So these are the relocation scenarios. There were 2 in the plan. There was 3 in the plan. I'm going to start at number 2 because scenario number 1 was a no action plan. And basically what it showed is that the current financial picture was not sustainable the cooperative would, they would lose revenues. They'd be required to do additional borrowing, and basically it wouldn't remove any homes. So that was not it basically just showed what the current financial picture was. But it was not anything that would have been seriously considered. This scenario, there was a set of assumptions with it. So this is kind of how it's operating now in a way. So as homes are removed, they're not replaced. But what this means is that Tri-Park is losing lot rent. So they're either going to have to make it up, raise them, but there's only so much that they can raise it. There were projections in this scenario that included, assumptions. So they would, the capital improvement plan was updated. They would increase reserve contributions from what they currently were. They would refinance loans. They would be able to pull out some cash for immediate capital improvements from that refinancing. It assumed that the operating expenses would increase over time. And it also assumed that about 4 homes per year would be removed. So it would take about 11 years for the 42 homes in the agreement to be removed. This wasn't it's not ideal. It takes a long time to remove the homes, although it did meet the intent of the agreement to relocate 42 homes, but it wasn't ideal because Tri-Park, basically loses lot rent. People are losing homes, and we're losing some of our affordable housing stock in Brattleboro. The scenario that ends up being the preferred approach is called what they called a balanced approach. So basically they identified 25 infill lots in the 3 areas of the park that I showed you on the map. It takes into account all of the upcoming capital costs with the the sewer upgrade, demolition and replacing the maintenance garage and site development. There is a loss of some lots. They don't quite get to the 42. This scenario, it's going to basically require a lot of public funding to make it work. But it does seem like it's a feasible approach. It's based on a 10-year lot attrition, but with more money and more resources behind it, hopefully it would go quicker. And I know that that's what the state would like to see. So again, that is the preferred approach. It allows some units to be lost, some go to a new location. It addresses the infrastructure improvements that are needed at Glennon. It says Mountain Home. It should say Black Mountain. I'm sorry. And there is one thing about this approach that it doesn't really take into account the bridge situation, because it wasn't towards the end of the project that we really knew what the cost of the bridges were going to be. So the plan is recommending that Tri-Park work with the town to address the bridges. Benefits of this approach is that it improves the revenue from lot rents. It reduces the impact of attrition. It's the potential for rapid relocation of homes, and it doesn't require additional loans. The challenges are that it requires participation of outside funding sources, so the state and others. It's going to require management because there'll be new lot development. And the new development and relocation will directly impact some shareholders. So where there might be a little bit of open space in the park right now, somebody might find that there is a house next to them. So that is an impact. And then finally, the master plan laid out kind of 3 phases. I would say that right now we're still in the pre-development phase. Tri-Park has some funding commitments from Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. They've had an RFP out looking for a developer to work through them with this phase. We have the opportunity for a enhancement grant to the VCDP funds that we had to do this project. So I've been working with Tri-Park to understand what the sewer upgrade cost might be. And so there might be the funding that we would use could do some of the planning for those sewer upgrades in Black Mountain and Glen Park. Tri-Park has been working with the state representatives. They submitted a earmark request with Congressman Welch's office, and they're really serious about moving this forward. And it's in everybody's interest that we do that as well. It's really important that Tri-Park remains financially viable. The town has backed those assessment or with the assessments. If they can't pay it, the rest of the town pays it. So we are obligated to that. So we've been working with them to try to make this project happen. There's a key part to this, though, that these are people's homes, and the reality is that several of them are quite old and might not just be able to be moved. They're either not roadworthy, or they've been modified, or they're just they're older homes. So, what are the new homes going to be on those lots? How are they going to make them affordable? So, incentives and kind of housing relocation assistance are all parts of the master plan implementation. It might mean that some of the residents in Tri-Park decide to relocate elsewhere because they cannot afford what the new home on the lot might be, or so there's lots of pieces to this. There's the human element that is huge. And with that, I guess I will end the presentation and invite any questions. And Liz?
So does the earmark that we heard about 2 weeks ago, does that make this whole, or is that just a piece of the puzzle?
Yeah, can we maybe invite Kay and Mary to turn on their cameras? Kay maybe can speak to that.
Kay, are you here?
She's not on. I didn't see what their final request was, so that's why I think.
Sure.
Here I am.
Okay.
And
Hi,
where's Mary? Is Mary? Oh, hi, Mary.
Here.
That request will not pay for all of it, but it would help us afford the movement of the maintenance building so we could locate new lots there. It takes a very small piece of it and finances that. Mary, you want to add something?
The best estimate, I think, is that it would be, I can't remember now what we asked for, $1 million or $2 million. Anyway, it would certainly not be the whole project.
Mm-hmm. And are you guys looking at other avenues for infrastructure grants from the state, for example, for your water and your wastewater?
Yes, so we are in the process of hiring a company that's going to investigate all the different funding sources for all our different projects. And
that sounds great.
We're meeting in 2 days to make that decision. So we're moving it forward as quickly as we can.
There's a couple of DEC programs that are being looked at. I think one piece, I might not have mentioned it, but it kind of was alluded to, is that they really can't take on more debt. So we're not looking for loans. They're looking for grants.
Right. Daniel?
I feel like this might be a refrain we'll hear often over the next several months, but perhaps some of that ARPA money might be utilized well in, funding pieces of this project as, one-time money that would be a grant. I'm not asking for a decision, but, I'm looking at the list of things to be done, and, it's a chunk of money.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that Kay and Mary are on top of this in terms of understanding the grants, but from what I understand about the federal money coming in, there's so many different avenues. You know, there may in fact be specifically infrastructure money
Yes.
and other money from the state. So I think you know, you're right to have this in mind, but where it ultimately shakes out is a responsibility that actually we have going forward.
Yeah. And there's an interesting, I'm sorry, Daniel, I didn't mean to jump in on that. Because
okay.
the way that the cooperative is set up, they're not always in a position to receive the grants. So that's been a little bit of challenge when we're looking for grants.
And is it possible then that the town can receive it for them? Is that a process?
I'm not sure. It could
Okay.
be.
Daniel?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. I guess whilst I was holding the floor, I wanted to just kind of let Kay and Mary know about the Vermont Emergency Rental Assistance Program that just launched the other week. It helps people with lot rent, both back and going forward, and also with utility and other housing costs. And that can be accessed online by going to the Vermont State Housing Authority website. And so I don't know what outreach the park board or the park management has done. I know that, you know, I've worked with folks who took advantage of the rental housing stabilization money last time round. And so just making sure that as many people at the park who need access to that kind of assistance know that it's out there.
Okay.
Daniel, I believe we had a letter arrive in our mailbox just 2 days ago, which described the process and had the paperwork there, because many of our shareholders or our residents do not have computers, and they don't have the knowledge to pull something up on a computer. But so we sent paper copies to people. Okay.
Sevka would be happy to help folks apply.
Right. Thank you.
And Daniel, how does that work? Like, would a representative from SEPCA come to a meeting?
No, it's with this, it would probably be more like a resident at the park gave the Brattleboro SEPCA office a call and we would go through the application over the phone. The trouble with the paper application is the VSHA really doesn't want paper applicants. It'll take so much more to process. So if folks don't have access to a computer or don't feel comfortable accessing a computer to do that kind of application, we could do it on their behalf with them.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that was,
Oh.
Tim, you have a comment?
Sorry, I should have raised my hand. I just wanted to sort of highlight some of these facts and figures just to kind of make sure everybody kind of absorbs the largeness of this importance of this community to Brattleboro. It says on page 4 of the final that I'm looking at here that almost 10% of the total population of Brattleboro live in these 333 mobile home sites and nearly 1,000 people. It's just remarkable because, I mean, I'll just say that sometimes I think about District 1 and I think of lots of open space and a lot of, let's be blunt, you know, well-off people in the woods, you know, and I just want to give a shout out to how important it is for our town to take care of these people who are our neighbors as well. When we're considering everything from the walkability of the Route 9 corridor, which has been before us very recently, to public transportation routes, to the quality of Route 9 itself, bikeability, you know, as we're trying to work on from at least 91 going east. It's all pretty connected and just so important for Brattleboro, I think. And, you know, the ARPA money, of course, comes across my mind, and it's important to balance what other opportunities that don't have to be town related, obviously. But I also look at when you look at the list of lenders, you have one of the Brattleboro special assessments is listed at 2%, and in parentheses called an admin fee. I think that's there because it certainly is a good rate to have, something at 2%. But it is something that we could look at. I mean, it's not due until 2031, and they pay an annual interest of $45,000. So that's a good chunk of change that they'll be paying from now until 2031. So I'm just advocating for looking at the big picture and making sure that people without a lot of money also get supported by the taxpayers in the town.
Daniel.
I just want to double down on what Tim's saying there. I think it's really important to recognize that this is a significant number of Brattleboro residents and that there are important, infrastructure and safety, and I'm presuming also quality of life needs that would be achieved by this work. And I hope that we will kind of consider this as we're making decisions about what to do with that ARPA money, because there isn't another, Liz is right in pointing out the potential for infrastructure money coming down the pike as well, but we can't expect another windfall anytime soon. And so given the nature of the needs here, in order, as Sue pointed out early in the presentation, the current situation is not sustainable, right, and will lead to the loss of affordable housing in our town, which we all would agree is a massive concern of ours. So, yeah.
Yes, Daniel. Sue has a comment, and then we'll hear from Len.
Yeah. I just want to point out, Tim gave some of their population numbers. They're larger than a lot of towns in Vermont, and they don't have the resources that municipalities have. They don't get the assistance with bridges or road funding or, so it is, really critical that, just some of these funding sources that are not open to them. And so they've been going it alone, having bought into substandard infrastructure, and they've partnered with the town over the years. Obviously, the water and sewer improvements in Mountain Home were necessary. They were public health issues. So I just want to give them credit for all that they've done to sustain their community and look out for their interests as well.
Yes, that's great, Sue. Good point. Ian, let me just see what Len has to say, and then I'll go to you.
Oh. Len?
Are you on? There you go.
Thank you. For a public safety standpoint, it's I couldn't agree more with looking at using some of this money to help get these folks out of the danger of the flooding, and I think it would be a great step. So I just wanted to put my input on that. Thank you.
Ian?
Yeah, I just had a quick question, Sue. I think this is probably for you. Is there potential for more significant cost in the removal of older homes that are in the floodway? Do we have any, is there a requirement from the state on what a lot that is no longer going to be utilized that's in the flowway needs to be at a certain state or anything like that?
I don't know about that. Actually, Kay or Mary might, if either of them were involved with the removal of units at Glen Park. I think that there's kind of a $15,000 estimate of what it costs to demolish and remove. And I don't know if that includes taking up the pad. I think it does, probably taking up the pad and capping any of the infrastructure. If they're still on, they might have a better answer to that.
Some of them have been taken up and some of them have been left. So I don't exactly know how it works. The ones in Glen Park that washed away a long time ago are gone. However, there are some newer ones that are not gone yet.
Newer vacant ones.
Correct. Thank you.
And so for the plan, those would need to be removed eventually, I guess.
I think part of the plan is going to be taking the area where all the homes are removed and restoring it into a park or some kind of a green area for people to use. There are plans to do that once that happens.
So Sue, let me just recap. This plan was prepared at the state's suggestion, strong suggestion, to identify what the needs are, to quantify the money that's required. And then the next stage that Kay talked about was getting someone, a firm, to help them identify where grants can be sought, where resources can be sought. So they're continuing on that path, and hopefully will keep us, you and us, informed as they go forward. And so that at various junctures along the road that they're on, we can see if there's ways that we can help them.
Yeah, I think that's correct. What I would say is if we do submit for an enhancement grant through the VCDP program, then we'll be more actively involved because we would be managing that money. So we just be continuing to partner with them.
Very good. Yes.
I think, yeah, I would say it a little more strongly. We're hiring a firm not just to help us identify funding, but to help us manage and implement the entire process. And since the town is likely to be one potential source of funding, I'm sure you'll be hearing from us frequently.
Well, that's good because, you know, you have a lot of supportive head nods up here, and you know, you're a big part of our community, and we want to, you know, keep you as strong as possible. So please come back and tell us. We're all very interested, and, you know, we want to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Kay and Sue.
Okay. All right. So next we have what I would like to call the 5 Fs.
Go
And
for 6.
well, let's see if Stephen can come up with another one. Mr. Dodson?
Hello all, can you hear me?
You're a little echoey.
Yeah.
Am I on? Here, let me switch real quick. I can put on a headset. Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Great. And Liz, I am going to ruin your alliterative fun right now. I'm taking a cue from the Democrats and talking about infrastructure and expanding from facilities to really thinking about all of our built environment, because fossil fuels are in all of it. So the one piece you'll see in my memo, which I'll run through briefly with you guys, is that I did rename it a bit to be the Fossil Free Infrastructure Fund. And if you feel strongly we can change it, I understand. It's really the content of this memo that matters, not the title of the fund, right? So just to say, I want to start with a quick update on Cow Power and the decision you all made to invest 6% of our annual electricity usage into that program. In consultation with GMP, part of what came up is that we have 50 different accounts, and they have set up their billing and usage softwares to operate in specific ways. So it was kind of impossible for them to do 6% across 53, I think, different accounts evenly. And so we did an assessment of what accounts would amount to a total of 6%. The 2 accounts that felt most appropriate were the library and the electric vehicle car chargers. And that's both because they have a consistent profile with the rest of the usage of the town. They won't waver from being a total of 6%. If the rest of the town is being used, they're using the chargers more, they're going to the library more. It moves proportionally with the overall mean. They also are great opportunities to have a little outreach to the public about what we've done and be able to have something that's notable for some towns. Electric vehicle chargers are critiqued for their sourcing. It's only as clean as where you're getting that electricity. And now we would be able to say that we're sourcing from renewable sources in those. The library clearly can do some public education and outreach that I think would be really supportive of our farms, of our town, and the choice we've made. So that's really an update more than anything else. I can answer questions about that, but otherwise I'd like to move into the other main section.
Well,
of
before
the
you
memo.
go,
Yeah.
leave that topic, will there be some sort of a press release that will discuss those bragging rights that you just discussed?
I would love to make a big deal of it. Yeah, absolutely.
I think we would too.
Can
Continue,
do.
please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. We will be sure to do that and push it out on the planning department's social media and our newsletter and things. I want to mention those things so people know about them to sign up for them.
Great.
The infrastructure fund, part of what you all directed us to do is come up with some recommendations for how to structure this investment in making all of our facilities and operations fossil fuel free. And so what I sought to do in this memo is define, as best I could tell from the original intent, the domains in which we should be clear that we are going to spend this money and why. All these measures have cost savings results in the end. A lot of them have cost savings results together, and that's important to realize too. I'll come back to that. But the order in which I present these domains also represents in some ways the order in which we should pursue the implementation pieces, at least. There's the most to gain in efficiencies, as you'll see as the number one. I need to pull out a full screen so I can refer to the document now too. Efficiency, generation, storage, and electrification. Those are the four big buckets of implementation. And it really builds a lot in that order in terms of how we'll try and prioritize things. The fifth is a unique domain, but it enables the first four. This is based off of the kind of regional standard being that to develop a project, you have to spend about 15% of the total project costs on the planning and development of it. And some of this requires some research and feasibility testing, consulting with innovative technology firms that have done things like in-pipe hydro over in Keene, which we've been looking into. So essentially, we're saying the first four are how we should implement this money. The fifth is what it will take to find the opportunities to implement this money in these four domains. There's some details at the end about funds that were existing that we see as kind of priming the fund, seeding the fund. But this is just the general guidance and recommendation for how to move forward here. So in the end, the 70,000 breaks down into 61,000 of implementation and 9,000 of planning to enable that implementation. The two will operate a little differently in that the 61 would be able to accrue year over year. And that's important for big capital projects that are in the future that we have to plan for and set aside, more than what is annually allotted in just that fund to achieve some big things. But the planning and project piece, that we mean to spend. If we're not spending it, we're not finding the opportunities to make the other things happen and do the rest of it, in my mind. So Peter may have some comments on this. He gave some valuable input about kind of the existing funds and how this can all flow into the existing capital project planning process, so that you wouldn't all see each of these investments in of itself. You'd see it as part of the entire project to be able to see all the benefits and efficiencies, because you have to take a systemic view sometimes to see how these things play out. It can't just have a, you can't look at it alone. It's part of a system. So the existing process can facilitate that. The select board would review it in the same way it already reviews existing projects, and we would highlight how we mean to use this fund in support of those things. I'm not sure if I have more to say here, but I'm happy to.
Okay, well,
entertain
hang in
questions.
there, because I think that you asked Peter to say a few things. So let's have Peter say a few things.
Thank you. And yeah, I have two things to add. Thank you, Stephen, for presenting the material so clearly, and for coming up with the concept of the 4 different areas in sort of cascading order of priority. There have been others of us who've worked together in this, but Stephen was in the lead, and I think that it heads us in a direction of making the intended use of these funds in what we believe will be the most impactful way. And speaking specifically to the part that he alluded to at the end there about process, that's also the intent of blending this work into our well-established practices related to planning and prioritizing capital projects. So as there are needs of the town that are coming along to be addressed, that we make sure that it's an integrated part of our capital planning process to be looking for these opportunities to be energy efficient, or add an energy generation component like solar on the roof of a building that we need to construct anyway in order to just perform town functions. So and then the other aspects of this, the energy storage, so that we can hold on to that energy that we might generate. So so we see a way that will incorporate this for sort of the efficiency of the effort, but I think even more importantly for just making this a natural part of how we plan capital work, so that as we try to make sustainability thinking part of our everyday work in all the different functional areas of town government, the more that we bring this kind of an initiative into our basic operations, rather than have it feel like something separate and extra we need to pay attention to, the better off we're going to be in the longer run. It'll just become part of how we do business. So that's important, I think. And then the one other thing I wanted to shine a bright light on is the fact that the initiative that the select board took just within several weeks ago to establish this, to authorize the $70,000 to get it started, and to express your desire that led to our work to be more specific about how to put the money to good use, that it's actually going to kickstart pretty significantly because of the time of year when this decision got made. So I think we should recognize and appreciate that there's about $14,000, $13,766 that's left in an old energy efficiency fund that the town used several years ago for the 2016 energy audits that were performed. There's $13,766 left in that fund, and it doesn't make sense for that to sit separate. So we're recommending that this simply be folded into the 70. And then with an additional $61,000 going into this fund on July 1st with the new fiscal year, we, as soon as just a couple of months from now, 2.5 months from now, we're going to have $144,766 in this fund. A really significant start. So while we want to be methodical about how we spend it, we're not in a hurry to draw that down. The fact that it starts in such a robust manner and then will again, continue to build up over time, positions us really well to have this achieve what you want it to achieve. That kind of moves the needle for us in terms of how we address these opportunities.
Ian.
You're getting into just talking about this now?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stephen, Peter, thank you so much for presenting that. I want to say that I think this is great. I want to give a little bit of voice to in particular, the fifth domain. I really, really support it. I think giving it also money, the 9,000 this is such a rapidly evolving field, and we are asking a lot of this fund. And so to not only say we want to invest in all of these different things, all of these 4 other domains, but then to also give investment into that work in that research to figure out how we can actually implement it on a town level, I think is great. So I really appreciate the way it's structured here, and yeah, I'm excited to vote for it.
Can we just hold that thought, all of our thoughts for a moment, while I ask Janet and Elizabeth, should we take a break to give you a break and then just finish up after in 10 or 15 minutes? Or how do we all feel about that? Let's just take a break because it's 8 o'clock and that's our promise. And come back at 8:15. We all good with that?
Yeah.
And then we'll just finish up. Sorry to keep you all waiting, but I think that's what we should do. All right. See you at 8:15. Okay, we're back in session. Ian had a comment. I'm sure others do. So who would like to speak to this? Tim?
Oh, did Ian have a comment, or I don't want to jump the line?
I already spoke.
Yeah, he spoke before the break, and that's certainly welcome to speak more, but I'm just.
Okay. Well, Stephen, there you are. I was looking for you you moved on my screen. First off, I wanted to say thank you. The solution of library and the electric vehicle chargers is elegant, I think, and really good way to deal with that sticky issue of having so many accounts. And I just want to check in on the sort of, I think you said that the prioritization was according to number roughly on the plan, with efficiency work being number 1, which I absolutely support. But number 5 is kind of like an overall, like a set aside one sort of. Okay. I take the nod as a yes. I think, I don't know, my initial reaction is that 15% for planning and project R&D is a little high, because we do have you and many other, it was brought to our attention that a lot of 15% of regional, plans is because we have to bring in outside people. So we do have the advantage of having you at our disposal. So I'm just wondering if that should be thought of as a little bit lower cost. Oh, Peter.
Yeah, I'd like to actually speak to that, because I think it's important to recognize that this is layering something that is additional beyond normal, what has been until now, normal project planning, layering something additional in, and that something additional generally is going to involve some pretty highly technical aspects to it. And so the thinking there, we had a pretty robust conversation about this at staff level before bringing this forward to you. And I asked that same question about, do we really need to have an administrative piece of this separate from the sort of ongoing investment that we make in planning for our capital projects? And I find compelling the need to, as we add these, capturing these opportunities into our capital projects, we're adding in scope to those projects, and the scope of what we are planning to invest in the planning and development of those projects is calibrated to the original expectations. So perhaps over time, this will in fact become so well integrated like we want it to, that it all just sort of becomes part of one thing. But for now, while we're training ourselves and learning better habits, I think it's important to invest this small piece in the operational side to make sure that we are capturing the opportunities that exist in the implementation.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Oh, Stephen, did you want to add? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, just to chime in, these elements aren't elements of a typical project design, and they are newer kinds of technologies. To incorporate them is to start to go the extra mile, and you need extra expertise. And the only reason that I can actually spread myself across all these different domains of sustainability is that I know enough to know when I don't know enough. And these people are those folks that we would need to call in to look at feasibility of solar, feasibility of this in-pipe hydro, and the engineering that is needed. And that's special engineering knowledge, right? That's not just the run-of-the-mill thing that you can pick up with a contractor in a region.
Yeah.
So it's those kinds of opportunities that we're really trying to target in that way, and support all the departments in taking the time to consider all of this ongoing too. You know, they have people that they need to bring in and consult with that I don't even know yet, right? So working with the network of partners we already have in that capital planning process and adding a layer of complexity to it, this will help us handle that.
Yeah. Thank you. And this is one of those moments where when I find myself entering my 5th year, I know when to step back and let staff do their job, as long as I'm reassured that the direction is a good one. And my last comment was just, and this purely as a comment, just take it as such, that when I see, the reason I asked about priorities, when I see energy generation versus energy storage, as someone who has some direct experience with building off-grid energy storage solutions for solar systems, for instance, I know that sometimes that makes sense in a project and sometimes it doesn't. So in a way, we have to look at these numbers of priorities as being very, what's the word, fungible or shiftable on a project by project basis. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's not, it's general priorities, probably not specifically project priorities. Yeah,
I would agree. And just to chime in, I mentioned that the combination of these domains is actually where we find the best economic return. When you have generation and you can store it, you can charge a vehicle, and it's powering a building that's efficient. That's the dream. So considering those efficiencies and implementations together really gives us the full picture. And you all have, you're enabling a fund that can be used in all those ways in the same moment. And that's, I think, a really innovative thing.
great. Thanks to you both.
Daniel.
Thanks. I'm very excited about this. It was a lovely surprise all those however many weeks ago it was when it appeared out of nowhere. I think it's going to allow us to do some pretty interesting things. And I, like Tim, I'm going to just kind of like step back and let the good professional people go and do their stuff. And I'm also wanting to make sure that what we end up with year on year is additional work that reduces our reliance on fossil fuels, as opposed to just kind of saying, oh, we'll take those funds from that bucket and we'll still do the same amount of work. And I know that you know that. And I was almost not going to say it, but I feel like I just want to be very clear that, like, you know, I don't expect a year from now for us to have purchased one hybrid that we were going to purchase anyway, and just taken it from this bucket.
Well, I would agree with that point, Daniel. And I'm surprised. I mean, this is a surprise, I think, to all of us, just in the way that this is, it's so programmed. I mean, I think when we were conjuring up this fund, we were anticipating that there would be money available when the time arose for a building that's something that needs to be purchased or built, that we would add this money to make it efficient and the way we want. And this is very different. In my, you know, I'm really just kind of wrapping my head around it in terms of the programming of it and the 5 points and the domains and the blah, blah, blah. So you know, we could all step back and say, okay, fine, or we could think about it some more, or, you know, what do we want to do? Jessica, I haven't heard from you. Do you have a comment?
I wanted to stay a little quiet just because I wasn't fully understanding the original intention of it, and I think that you voiced one of the things that I was thinking about was that it seemed like it was intended for a more loose application than a prescribed one. Definitely seeing this proposal from the staff helps me understand that, you know, maybe it's not a matter of, oh, we need some solar panels on that, so let's throw some money from this fund onto it. It really should be a more strategic and holistic approach that's taken. So I'm fresh to this. I have questions, but I really trust the idea that a more strategic approach is probably the right choice here.
Stephen, is there something that you can tell us that made this program go from one big pot of money to the 5 domains that you've identified? Like,
Sure.
what was the driving principle in your thinking? I think that would help me.
Yeah. I think I was just trying to think about how to phrase this. I was trying to ensure that it could be implemented within these 4 domains. I wanted to ensure that it could be applied in these ways. If it needs to be more open-ended, I would suggest you add some category that says, and other expenditures at the discretion of the select board, or something to that effect. You know what I mean? It's more that I'm trying to make sure that we have some stated intentions that are clear, that enable us to really look at certain opportunities and know that they already are part of what this thing is intended for, so that we can move forward in that planning. So as long as those bases are covered, I'm fine with whatever openness or flexibility you all need to wrap around that. And the other point I would just say is that you would only see these in package with larger capital projects, saving up for the next DPW facilities, right? And all the things that could be done on top of that. And there's a lot of opportunity there, right? Some things will be things we would pick up from the audit we just did, the low-hanging fruit that remains, you know, those kinds of things. But it's integrated into the existing buildings and their development and renovations and different work we've been doing for years. So you'll always see a big picture, and you'll always see us trying to make those bigger steps. So,
Well, now the point that you just made, I think it really addresses Daniel's idea that we don't want this to be what we would have done anyway. We want it to be for these big capital projects. And I wondered if maybe we could ask that it just be tweaked a little bit so that these intentions that all the board members are making are a little bit clearer before we vote on it. How do we feel about that? Jessica?
Another question I had was, is there a policy or something that the select board can offer the staff that would help guide choices like that?
Good idea. Peter?
So I want to speak to a couple of different aspects of this. First and foremost, I want to speak to why I think it's important, not just helpful, but important to have structure. And so the night that it came up as a really good solution to what had been a difficult conversation, and then created not just like a way to resolve that sort of challenging moment, but an exciting way forward, right? Opportunity that we could then move forward to capture, seize opportunities to move the needle in how we incorporate sustainable concepts into our operations and into our projects. If it was left as kind of a discretionary pot without, I appreciated just the comments that you made and the way that you framed it as being strategic. I think that what we're trying to do here, and what we expressed, I think that very night, I expressed that very night as our intention of how we would try to be helpful, is to bring forward something that you all would own, certainly. And if you're not ready to own it, we're ready to receive modifying direction from you so we can bring back something that you can own. But having something written down that we can, guide our staff work by, and the community can understand what your strategic goals are with this pot of money, is important. Both so that we don't end up sort of rowing our boats in different directions and ending up, sort of not accomplishing good things with this money, and so that the money actually gets, put to the intended uses. Right now, we don't have a definition to the intention of it. What we know is the overall goal is that we have resources to be able to do things like, for instance, back in the, one of the examples that was cited in the discussion, and appropriately so, is the decision that was made in the course of planning the public safety projects, the police and fire projects, to use propane heating systems in those buildings. There was very serious concern, lots of analysis done, and thoughtful consideration given to using renewable sources for heating those buildings. And the payback period was long enough and the initial cost was high enough that the decision was made that in order to keep the whole project moving forward, we needed to forego that and put propane in instead. And without judging that, sort of 2016 decision that was made in the context at that time, and the pressures on keeping those costs, getting those costs down to, as low as we could to achieve the 3 projects, it nevertheless does represent for us a missed opportunity when only a few years later, we're looking at how, gee, we wish we had made a different decision. These funds, if we apply them the right way, will enable us to make those better decisions, because we'll have some resources we can draw on for those components. It doesn't mean necessarily, although it could be like in the case of the hydro in the water pipes, it could be an entirely different innovative thing that we do because it's wonderful and this can move that forward. But in many cases, the reason why we suggest that it be incorporated into our standard capital planning processes is because in many cases, what we're looking at is the opportunity to say, put solar on the roof of a building we'd be building anyway, or do something else that is integrating a component that we can afford to accomplish because we need to do the basic project, and we have this as a source of funds for that component that we otherwise might not have thought we could afford.
Tim?
Yeah, I have to just say, I don't look at this as any specific direction, but it's a set of guidelines as it's proposed 5 domains, just kind of defines it for our staff to be able to bring things forward. We're going to be presented with an idea and a direction, and we're going to still be able to sign off on these uses.
Every time.
So I really think that because it's in the realm of the planning department, that this kind of planning and structural framework is pretty important. And that's why my questions were more about, priorities and how much R&D funds should be appropriate, that kind of thing. But I wouldn't say that it's really, we shouldn't overthink it. I think it's a guideline that we should embrace and see what comes out of it, and then we can argue over whether that's the appropriate use.
Ian, let me ask Stephen to respond because he's had his hand up for a while. Did you want to say something, Stephen?
Thank you. Yes, I just wanted to echo one word that Peter brought up, which was payback period. And the question, if you're asking what's the extra mile, I think we need to have a clear understanding of what payback period we tolerated before this, and then understanding that as the first mile. We'll look for things beyond that but not too far beyond, of course, you know, but that's what you're looking for. We can do that if we have that idea of where that threshold is between the first and extra mile from the last kind of tradition of how much risk we've been willing to take, which I'm not clear on myself just from the history at this point, but we can figure that out.
Ian?
I want to just piggyback off Tim, echo in full agreement with him, and also say that I think the domains very much capture the discussion from the cow power and what we were kind of aiming at with this fund. And so, and I actually think the prioritization of the domains makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of different things to tackle when you're talking about energy, and to put some thought into like what's the first and the second and the third tier and how we want to actually tackle this. Yeah, I think it is some structure that, you know, isn't the end all be all of where this money goes, but it gives it a path, and I don't think we need to overthink it. Agreed.
Anyone else have any comments?
I just have a question.
Yes.
Thinking about this as, you know, these projects are attached to already existing capital projects. If the select board were to say, nah, we don't think you should use the fund for that, would that full proposal, including whatever efficiency or fossil-free facilities element, move along in the capital costs approval process as is, or would that be taken out so that the project could move along without that element?
Peter?
Would almost certainly be a case-by-case situation, depending on how much cost and how much perceived value was in the sort of incremental component that we might be talking about. So I think we're already getting smarter, and I think this speaks to Daniel's point about, you know, don't spend this money on a Prius. We're already getting smarter about incorporating the stuff that's pretty easy to incorporate, right? That's just the better way to do business. That's how we're designing our projects now. But there's, you know, the continued leaps forward in the technology and in the opportunities and in the cost attached to those. And what you've done here, which is really great, but also hard to define more precisely than what we have so far, is created the opportunity to identify those things that push us out a little farther and a little harder in the direction of doing the right thing instead of the cost-effective thing.
And just to be quick, I can't show you the benefit of these innovative solutions without comparing them to more traditional alternatives. So hopefully you'll get that comparison and those kinds of options within that planning and process.
Yep. And there may be, I think that there is one really known one already that we're excited about and learning more about, and we don't yet really know the potential or the cost of. But this inline hydro is, you know, the idea that we operate a water system that has so much pressure in it, so much natural head coming down from Pleasant Valley, that in many parts of town, people have a pressure reduction valve where the water comes from the town's pipe into their home, right? So that's just controlling all that pressure in a way that it won't bust your pipes in your house. But if we can capture that pressure and generate electricity from it, what a win. And it's an emerging technology. It's actually being used in some places. We're learning about it. And that would be something that would be entirely different than, you know, adding some value to a project. But we also think it's important to use these funds to add value to projects where we can, because we're going to need to construct those projects anyway.
And could I highlight one opportunity that arose since you all made this decision that actually is related to what we may spend on in the future? GMP reached out about a new resiliency program that they're launching, and they identified Brattleboro as a city that has a unique profile both in its need and its vulnerability. and they're looking to deploy energy storage at scale in partnership with municipalities. So we're exploring that program and being one of these towns that is one of the first to work with them in that capacity. So there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Okay, so my reading of the nodding heads seems to me to say that our questions have been answered and we might be ready for a motion. And I would accept a motion if someone wanted to make that motion.
I got us a motion.
Yeah.
I move to approve staff's recommendation for the administration and use of the newly created. Oh, should this be?
I was going to suggest slash.
Yeah.
Come up with the actual name.
So this says newly created fossil fuel free facilities fund, but then from the backup material / fossil fuel free infrastructure fund.
Thank you.
Well, you know what? Why don't we let Stephen call it infrastructure if he likes? But when we're voting on it,
No.
I would like to amend my title just because if you go your way, Liz, we can call them the funds.
Oh yeah, that rolls.
5F fund.
Right, it's up to Liz to repeat it, I guess.
Okay, so Ian has graciously made a motion to approve the staff's recommendation for the administration and use of the newly created fossil fuel free facilities fund. And I would be pleased if we took a vote. So hand and voice, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right. It's been passed unanimously, and I thank you all. And there is, in particular, Stephen, this is really, we're all, I think, very excited about this.
Me too.
And there's
Yeah.
one more motion that I will entertain for this evening.
Oh, are we done?
Move to adjourn.
And you'll beat me to it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you all, and good night.
Night.